Just, I guess the question is buildings.
Who'd like to go first? Don't be shy. Peter, Peter.
Okay, yeah, I mean, we don't have a lot of new buildings at the moment. I think our first one breaks ground next month. But we have been thinking about that in terms of Old Oak Common Station and actually modelling how people use that station and where they want to go, not just within the station, but in the surrounding area. So we have our street network, and how does that plug in to the station? And that kind of works with the gateless technology we've been thinking about. What's the behavioural change we're going to have to look at and help support and monitor to inform the design of the building as well. But there's no reason why, kind of looking at the station, how it can't be rolled out to the other stations we're going to be building, and actually any of the development which we're looking at, because most of our houses will be in big blocks of apartments. So there'll be lots of communal areas of people flowing through and moving about. So that how people use their spaces, we can take that from the big development plots and then extrapolate that out.
That's very interesting. Maybe it's something that VR can help with in terms of predictive planning. It's a really interesting area, that. Laura, Peter, Laura?
I suppose in terms of the Playable Cities competition, that will be an opportunity for whoever's out there to say, okay, if buildings are how we interact with the urban environment, then there could be some technology or innovation or art installation on or near a building to make people, for example, if there's a road or an area that is not visited at night because it feels unsafe, then if there's an installation that is brought to that area, then that would make you interact with that space in a different way. We're also doing some other smart projects with buildings and some heat mapping projects. So having us fly over the city and take heat images of the city and look at not just heat loss, but giving energy solutions for particular streets or particular houses just from going over with a camera. So there's some really interesting solutions that you can look at in terms of sort of future energy systems for cities.
If I could add, Hypercat ran a spearhead around building information management up in Glasgow on some social housing, and installed a whole range of sensors in every floor and every room of the whole building to help better manage the overall environment for the tenants, to help sort of reduce energy costs, but also pick up on future issues for the ageing population. And it was a part of a project we submitted under the IoT demonstrator bid from Ipswich. We were looking at putting thousands of houses, social houses, into a scheme which we may readdress in the future subject to funding. But if you can install those sensors in advance to pick up, as we've heard, around sort of temperatures, movements, etc., this can give you a lot of data and analysis. And as people are now living into their 80s and 90s in social housing, how can we use that data to better inform and predict what might be happening? And you can pick up issues around dementia if people are turning the kettle on more frequently. If they're not turning the tap on enough and having enough to drink, they can fall if they haven't drunk enough water. And then if you tip over and you've had a fall, the cost to the health service is astronomical. And it's also the tipping point where people find it very difficult to recover fully. So there are lots of future interventions, and I think it's really important we do look at investing in social housing, but also in the private sector. If you build it in now when you're building new houses, why not put the sensors into all the rooms to give the residents, the occupants, the information they need, but also to help us deliver these sort of transformative social care scenarios where you could link up with your friends and neighbours, and not just the care workers. So it could be the community supporting the community.
It's a really, really interesting space, and effectively using us humans, while we are still on the planet, as sensors and actuators in some cases as well. We're working on a project with Innovate UK, which is exactly around that, and it's a really, really exciting area, and it's something that brings people into this smart cities piece as well, isn't it? So, next question from the floor. Yeah.
Sorry, I hope I'm not monopolising the questions.
Not yet, you're not. Again, sorry, though.
Last question. It's actually a follow-up on what you just discussed. I mean, has there been any broader discussion about some kind of generalised metering that could be a planning requirement for a new building in terms of sort of basically sort of more simplified outputs, whether it's energy and footfall and that kind of thing, and then it could be sort of integrated into sort of basically a requirement for a building's sort of practical completion, that it has this kind of essentially sort of a plug and play sort of that all buildings are required to have, so that this data can be leveraged sort of on a slightly more sort of organised and simplified way.
Just to mention again about the Hypercat standard, that if you start to build in these ways of interoperating, and it doesn't matter whether you've got your systems as a private individual, you've bought your home smart heating kit, or your insurer has provided you with sensors to detect if you've got any leaks near your washing machines, which they're looking at doing because the cost of return on investment for them really costs in if they can save replacing carpets and floors, etc. You've got to integrate all of these different systems together to the future. So I think those base building blocks of standards are essential. Where the service opportunities will be developed is open for the private sector and I suppose the public sector as well.
I think there's a basic level of sort of standardisation that you have to produce when you're building new houses, but at this moment it's not very complicated. It's giving you, as I say, it's just if you're looking at different houses on different housing websites, you see what the outputs are in terms of the heat and the energy efficiency. So yes, there is some sort of standardisation, but it's not smart. And at the moment, there are different organisations like Hypercat, like Smart Hub, that are looking to utilise smart technology to do that in much more detailed and much more clever way. But it's not one company, it's not something that's overall standards at the moment. So there's some way to go there.
And I think just how it gets embedded in the planning system is it's not there yet. But at the moment, I think it's important to provide those policy hooks which provide a general support. And then in the future, when you do get to that point, that there is more standardisation out in the marketplace and it's recognised more, then you can integrate those requirements in the future.
I think what's really important when you're looking at these new technologies and energy efficiency homes, when people are building new developments, at the moment they feel like it's a burden. Housing builders have said, oh, that's another how many K per house we're going to have to do. It's looking at how to change that conversation around so the big developers can say, look, we're green, look how great we are, and look how much value this adds to your home if you meet these standards. So at the moment, I think it's about changing that conversation around, because at the moment it's not like that.
So it's a very interesting area because we nearly had a code for sustainable buildings which got rather watered down, and we've got some rules and regulations around what you must and must not do and put in a building, but I'd say back, there's a lot that can be done in the specification, especially where you have either a planning process or you have the land and you're responsible as the ultimate developer to specify these things in. And of course they can be retrofitted as well, which is a relatively simple thing to do, especially around temperature, RH, CO2, whatever you might be measuring, which has an impact on comfort, well-being, performance even in a school and so on. And yet I see so many of these aspects value engineered out of projects. So I think I'd raise a question there around how important it is, I guess, to ensure that these things are included, especially around the sensor side of things. So just open that back up.
Yeah, no, I think that's the purpose as well of some of the new green towns and the developments that are coming up and the proposals. So Oxfordshire have got one in Didcot. And I've got to admit, in terms of the way they're going about it, they are starting the discussions now and saying, we need this, like you're open to it and saying, this is how we need to approach it. And the developers seem to be on board. So bringing them on board in the beginning, because I think in the past, local authorities have just been really happy that we're getting an investment. And actually, we've got a huge amount to offer. So it's flipping it back and saying, you're going to make a huge amount of money from this, so do it right.
Exactly. I think it's having that showcasing approach and using the government to help deliver that case and demonstrate it to the market. I think in terms of London's case, as I said, we're a bit of a guinea pig for some things. And if it can work in Old Oak, it can work in the other opportunity areas and across the UK as well.
Fantastic. Is there another question from the floor? Yeah, Seema, thanks. Tim.
Thank you. I'm just interested in this national level. Is there enough leadership at a national level to do the things that you're variously doing, which are all impressive, the descriptions of what's around, but is there sufficient national leadership? Do we need national leadership? I've got an interest because next week the all-party parliamentary group on smart cities is meeting for its annual bash, and I just wonder what I should be saying to them.
Great question.
Yeah, I
Write
think,
the answer down.
I think that's really interesting, and I think some of the catapults, when the catapults were introduced, that was their purpose. I think some of the catapults lost their way a little bit in terms of the bureaucracy that was brought in and the red tape which they weren't meant to have. Some of them have worked really well. I think what Oxfordshire did is we thought, okay, we feel like we can create our own mini catapult in Oxfordshire because we think we can get things done more quickly. But we still work very closely with the catapults. I think, yes, there needs to be more leadership, which will then filter down to our own leaders, because at the moment I'm feeling like it's very bottom up. I've taken the role and the challenge of selling this rather than our MPs going, why aren't you doing this? It should be a bit of both, which would be really supportive. I think a project that we're looking to work with Hypercat and Peter is about creating clusters of smart cities, because I find it really frustrating that we go to conferences and there might be 3 different speakers from local authorities who are all doing something slightly different. Maybe that's what smart cities is about, is testing new things, but we haven't been good in the past at sharing what we're doing across it. We've been going, I've got this bid, I'm really pleased that my city's got this bid, rather than sharing that learning and going, why can't we do it across a bigger area? I've been trying to look at smart city. We've been looking at smart city clusters through Hypercat, and I'm looking at the England economic heartland, so looking more regional and saying, okay, Northamptonshire might have, they've got great skills in terms of European bids. Cambridge have got a small smart city, well, they've got one smart city person working for them, but they've got some European funding. I've got a huge team that do lots of bids, so it's actually saying we could all do something together here. I think we haven't done it in the past, but we're moving in the right direction.
If I could add, I think about 4 years ago, perhaps the UK was close to leading the way. We were following Barcelona and others in Europe. But now if you look abroad, China has set ambitions to deliver 100 smart cities. Australia has done the same. So we should do that in the UK. Why not? And also there's a huge economic benefit, because if we develop the knowledge, I mean, we're moving into a knowledge economy. If we develop the knowledge and the capacity to deliver the new services, we can export that around the world. And I think that's what British standards are really keen on. They're already embedded into China. They're going to use the British standards. Well, let's use that as a way of selling our services into China and helping them deliver the 100 cities. But we've really got to step up the game here. I mean, it's, 1 or 2 cities is frankly laughable, and it's a shame. We should be leading the way. We've got the capabilities. I think the government should put some of the money into the private sector to link up with the public sector. The public sector is really keen. It's got these challenges. How do we unlock it? And I don't think we should just give the money to the public sector, because it might get diverted into areas such as just delivering the social care issues. We need to start to look at bringing the two together. And I think we can be far more transformative than we have been to date. So we really need...
Frankly laughable is going to make you really popular.
I'm sorry. But it's true, I'm telling the truth. If I was working still in the public sector, I might have to sort of seal my lips a bit more. But we need to step up the game seriously, quickly. It's a fast-moving global world, and the digital economy, we've seen all these sort of hockey stick curves. We've got to get up that curve quickly. We need to accelerate. So support to accelerate will be greatly appreciated, I'm sure. I'm sure my public sector colleagues would support that.
Nods. Okay, thank you very much. I think we'll round out there. So you managed to repeat two. I don't know if you realised it or whether they were hidden, but you went back to Nirvana again, and you also said wannabe, which is Spice Girls,
I
right?
noticed that.
Thank you.
So I don't know if it's Posh Spice or Scary.
Could be scary.
Maybe Baby, but maybe not. Or Dave Grohl. And Automaton.
Can we coin a Smart Spice?
Smart.
Perhaps Laura is the living embodiment.
Culturally significant. Automaton is out, I think, today or tomorrow, a new Jamiroquai album. So that's you, JK. And I got a bit lost at the end there. I think we had a couple of references, but I've ended up with John Farnham, which does give my age away, 1986, You're the Voice. Right, lunchtime,